There's a moment of pure, silent gravity that occurs when American historical certainty meets the quiet, ancient weight of a British correction. It is a specific, almost palpable phenomenon, akin to the sudden stillness in a grand cathedral when a tourist's loud exclamation echoes too far. It's not an explosive argument or a fiery debate. It is, instead, the subtle, deafening sound of a streamlined national mythology, gently bumping into a much older, vastly more complicated library of lived experience. We Americans often travel abroad equipped with a kind of storybook version of world events or compelling, color-coded tale where every dramatic arc finds its satisfying resolution in American triumph, ingenuity, or moral leadership. It's a narrative built for confidence, for forward momentum. But what happens when we proudly recite those polished pages to the patient archivists, the scholars, the guides, the everyday citizens who not only possess the original, unedited manuscripts, but whose very culture is written in their footnotes? The encounter is less a debate over facts and more a collision between two entirely different ways of relating to time itself. Imagine the scene in one of those hallowed Oxford seminar rooms, where the oak paneling is darkened by centuries of intellectual humidity and the very air seems thick with precedent. A visiting American postgraduate, earnest and energized by the democratic spirit that feels like his birthright, raises his hand. "With respect, Professor," he begins, his voice carrying the optimistic cadence of a new world's education. "It seems clear that the modern, functional concept of a democratic republic government, truly of, by, and for the people, was essentially an American creation." The room doesn't gasp in outrage. It simply stills, as if the collective breath of history has been momentarily held. The professor, a man whose demeanor seems woven from equal parts tweed, tea leaves, and benign exhaustion, peers over the rim of his spectacles. "An implementation," he corrects softly, the word chosen with surgical care. "Surely you mean a bold and successful implementation. To call it a creation would require us to dismiss the Athenian experiment as, what? A rather prolonged beta test. And the slow, bloody evolution of our own parliamentary model here as mere rehearsal." A gentle, knowing wave of laughter ripples through the other students, not mocking, but communal, the sound of a shared understanding. Flustered, the student recalibrates. "I mean a functioning system on a continental scale, where sovereignty genuinely resides with the citizenry." The professor turns to his cup of tea, stirring it with a slow, deliberate clink that seems to mark time in the quiet room. "You are describing with admirable clarity the philosophical destination of a journey that began on this island with Magna Carta, weathered a civil war that beheaded a king over parliamentary authority, and evolved through centuries of reform. It is a journey your founding fathers studied with great diligence." He takes a measured sip, letting the point steep. "Think of it as a literary work. We authored the first several volumes, clumsy, protracted, often violent drafts. You, across the Atlantic, produced a brilliant, best-selling, abridged edition, more accessible, perhaps with a more exciting cover. This dynamic plays out not just in academia, but in the casual theater of the streets. In London, a tourist adorned in a Tarzan stripes bucket hat shouts good-naturedly toward the immovable guards at Horse Guards Parade, 'Hey, still sore about that whole independence thing?' The guard, trained to ignore far greater provocations, remains a carved statue of tradition. His friend, filming on a phone, chuckles and eggs him on. 'Come on, mate, just admit we won. It's been like 200 years. A British woman passing by, walking a dog of impeccable pedigree, pauses as if struck by a mildly interesting scientific anomaly. You liberated yourselves from the particular burden of sending tax revenue to our crown.' 'Yes,' she states, her tone drier than a fine Amontillado. 'A commendable bit of administrative self-determination. We, in turn, liberated our attention toward the other 24 time zones we were administrating at the time. It seemed a rather equitable trade of concerns. The Americans stand frozen, smiles still plastered on their faces. Their brains worry as they try to parse the statement. Was that a backhanded compliment? A stunning dismissal. A history lesson delivered as a casual aside. The confusion is the point. Here lies the core, foundational disconnect. America celebrates the explosive, defining revolution, the brilliant flash of light and sound that created something new. Britain, with its long memory, is often more preoccupied with studying the lingering, complex smokeware. It drifted, what it obscured, what it ultimately settled upon. Our education system, for many of us, presented history as a series of moral and geopolitical victories, a sequential path where each chapter logically culminated in American triumph or moral leadership. The British curriculum, by contrast, and perhaps by necessity, seems obligated to include the chapters that come after the victory, the unintended consequences, the administrative hangovers, the regrets, and the deeply ironic footnotes. Our national story is a thrilling three-act Hollywood movie with a rousing score. Theirs is a dense, multi-volume biography full of contradictory motives, tragic flaws, and lengthy appendices. The rituals of tourism become stages for this clash. In a serene bath tea room, all bone china and floral patterns, an American husband receives a polished pot of Darjeeling. He grins, a glint of historical reenactment in his eye. "Don't worry," he announces to the waitress, "we'll keep this one in the cup." The waitress offers a smile that could slice a scone cleanly in two. "Lovely," she replies, her voice smooth as clotted cream. That particular harbor is currently a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This tea, however, is just for drinking. I'd recommend the milk first. The locals at a nearby table, overhearing, don't scoff. They simply offer glances a complex cocktail of 98% impeccable courtesy and 2% quiet. Speculative contemplation of historical homicide at Windsor Castle. A man from Dallas, accustomed to spectacles of grandeur, queries a patient guide. "So, what time's the changing of the monarch? Is there a schedule?" The guide blinks, a micro-expression of profound cultural translation flitting across his face. "The monarchy isn't a shift post, sir. It is a continuous state. The king is the king." Undeterred, the Texan seeks clarity. Right. But when does he come out for the show? The waving, the carriage. The guide's patience is a marvel of silent engineering. "Sovereignty isn't a performance," he explains, as if to a child fascinated by a complex clock. "Though it must be said, you've certainly turned its aftermath, the weddings, the gossip, the drama to rather compelling global television. A different kind of export." This reflects a deeper educational framing many Americans internalized. British history was the long, somewhat dreary prelude to our own brilliant opening act. They were the fading backdrop, all wigs and oppressive taxes. Once the spotlight of progress found its true star, us but to live in Britain, even briefly, is to realize they never saw themselves as the backdrop in anyone else's play. They were, in their own view, the entire, sprawling, messy, centuries-long production, a dramatic saga of empire, reformation, industry, and reinvention. Our revolution, from this vantage point, becomes one particularly dramatic, disruptive scene in a very long-running show. An important scene, yes, but not the finale, and certainly not the only plot. The social space of the pub provides a perfect forum for these historical adjustments. In a London pub, smoky with tradition and the scent of ale, an American, emboldened by his third pint, leans across the bar. "You know, you've really got to thank us," he declares to the bartender, "for saving your bacon in World War II." The bartender doesn't look up, continuing to polish a pint glass with the monastic focus of a man who has heard this before. "You joined the ongoing conflict in December of 1941, sir," he states, his voice flat and factual. After the declaration following Pearl Harbor, we, along with the Commonwealth and others, had been rather busy since September of '39. The American waves a dismissive, congenial hand. Details, semantics. We came in and finished the job. From the shadowy end of the bar, an old man nursing a half of bitter speaks without raising his head. "My father finished his job in the RAF in 1945, he says, his voice gravelly with memory. "Flew bombers from '41 onward. He used to say the final act had the most impressive special effects, certainly. But the plot was already written." The silence that settles over the bar then is not hostile, but dense a silence filled with the unspoken weight of the Blitz, the Battle of Britain, and years of lonely resistance. It is a silence richer and more potent than the ale. The cultural cross-examination flows both ways across the Atlantic. A British executive in a New York office endures the well-meaning cliched joke for the 100th time. "Love that accent. You sound just like a proper movie villain." She smiles, a practiced diplomatic curve of the lips. "How funny," she replies, her tone light. "We used to say the very same thing about yours. Only we weren't referring to actors in films. We were generally picturing pirates, gold prospectors, and revolutionaries." The American colleague's laugh halts, caught in his throat as he mentally runs a quick diagnostic. Was that a witty rejoinder? Or did history just reach across the table and deliver the most polite, devastating wink-nudge imaginable? This entire dynamic suggests the American relationship with Britain is not some simple post-colonial divorce. It's far more like an ongoing session of intricate family therapy. One sibling, vibrant, ambitious, and a touch brash, wrote a sensational, best-selling memoir about the thrilling, necessary act of running away from home to find freedom and fortune. The other sibling, older, more reserved, burdened with the family archives, quietly kept the original, annotated and often contradictory family diaries, filled with receipts, medical records, and letters that tell a more complex, less flattering, but arguably more honest story. Both are telling the truth. They are just operating from different source material and with wildly different narrative goals. Even on America's own hallowed revolutionary ground, the British perspective can reframe the legend. In Boston, a passionate tour guide gestures toward the harbor, his voice booming with patriotic fervor. On this very spot, brave patriots defied tyranny and made their statement by dumping British tea into these waters. From within the crowd, a British tourist's voice, mild and curious, interjects. It was mostly Chinese tea, actually. From the Fujian province, shipped by the British East India Company. The guide's dramatic pause stretches into a vacuum. He recovers, clinging to principle. The symbol. The act of defiance. "Oh, absolutely," the Brit agrees, nodding with apparent sincerity. A magnificent protest against a parliamentary tax, executed by destroying the commercial property of a separate colonized territory on the other side of the world. The layers of geopolitical irony are truly exquisite. We didn't just borrow their language. We took the complex, sprawling epic of English, streamlined its spelling, turned up the volume, added a relentless can-do attitude, and released it worldwide as a chart-topping hit single. The original artists watch with a mix of pride, bewilderment, and occasional horror at what became of their ballad. This pattern, the confident, sweeping declaration meeting the calm, specific, contextual correction, is a kind of unspoken cultural ritual. At the British Museum, an American couple wanders past the Rosetta Stone. "Kinda wild," the man whispers. Not unkindly, that they just, took all this stuff from everywhere. A curator gliding past overhears. "We prefer the term preserved for global academic study. she offers without breaking stride. Your nation's approach to territorial acquisition in the 19th century was philosophically similar. If I may say, though often executed with considerably fewer return labels and museum plaques. The couple frowns, defensive. That was different. That was manifest destiny. Building a nation. Naturally, the curator concedes, offering a thin, professional smile. The scale was continental. Your acquisitions tended to come with the bonus of eventual statehood and senators. Ours merely came with catalog numbers and scholarly debate. The iconic London black cab becomes a mobile confessional and debating chamber. A veteran cabbie shares his anthropological observation. Americans are my favorite fare. They tip in two currencies, dollar bills and grand historical theory. He recounts a passenger who once proclaimed, leaning forward from the back seat, democracy, freedom. Liberty American inventions, my friend. Our gift to the world. The cabbie caught the man's eye in the rearview mirror. Interesting, he mused. Who'd you have to fight a bloody war against to get them, then? The British, obviously. The passenger shot back with a laugh. Exactly, the cabbie smiled, navigating a roundabout. So you took our existing political operating system, changed the management, tweaked the user interface, and kept the core manual. In the trade, we'd call that a franchise agreement. A very successful one. The passenger roared with laughter. We improved it, made it scalable. Like karaoke improves a song, the cabbie mused philosophically, gently turning up the classical radio. The original melody is there, recognizable, but the presentation is uniquely enthusiastic. Even the sanctum of Shakespeare isn't immune. In a Stratford-upon-Avon gift shop, a man examines a quill pen and remarks to the young clerk, "The Bard's fine, a real classic." But let's be real, it was Hollywood that made him relevant to the whole world. The clerk, a PhD candidate in Elizabethan drama earning minimum wage, takes a deep, centering breath worthy of a thespian. "Yes," she says, her voice measured. "We gave you the foundational, timeless text exploring the extremes of human ambition, love, and folly. You gave us, in return, Leonardo DiCaprio shouting to be or not to be while brandishing a water pistol on a sinking yacht. Progress, I suppose, is a fascinating and multifaceted creature. At its heart, this transatlantic tension isn't really about who is factually right or wrong about a specific date or invention. It's about two profoundly different relationships with narrative itself. America tells its story primarily as fuelless source of confidence, a unifying mythos to power the engine of a young, ever-forward-looking nation. It is a story designed to inspire action. Britain, by contrast, tells its story, all of it the glory and the shame, the triumph and the regret as a means of understanding continuity. It is a story told to comprehend complexity, to sit with ambiguity, to trace the long arc of cause and effect. One nation employs history as a motivational speaker, pumping up the crowd for the next big challenge. The other uses it as a therapist, patiently unpacking the baggage of the past to understand the anxieties of the present. And yet, the most revealing, hopeful moments are often the quiet reconciliations found in shared humanity. In a cozy Cambridge pub, an older British local, his face a roadmap of laugh lines, raises his glass to an American visitor. "So, you're from the former colonies, then?" he asks, his eyes twinkling with gentle provocation. The American grins, playing along. We prefer to think of ourselves as the upgraded model, the 2.0 release. They talk through the evening, the barriers of national mythology softening with each pint. They find profound common ground. Their politicians are universally self-serving fools. Their healthcare systems are baffling, expensive rackets. And they agree with solemn conviction that the French can indeed be, at times, a bit smug. So what was it all for, then? The American slurs eventually, gesturing broadly between them to encompass centuries of war, rivalry, and cultural sniping. The Brit thinks for a moment, then clinks his glass against his new friends. For this, he says simply, for the absolute privilege to sit here centuries later, in a pub built before your country was a sketch on a map, and debate with warmth and a shared buzz who fundamentally misunderstood whom. That's the real, lasting peace treaty. The one written in ale, not ink. That is the quiet, enduring truth lying beneath the layers of jokes, flag-waving, and good-natured rivalry. America and Britain are not opposites locked in eternal conflict. They are echoes in the same canyon. One echo is loud, brash, and immediate, announcing its presence to the world. The other is older, drier, more attenuated, repeating the original sound but layered with the resonance of time, stone, and distance. Both civilizations cherish liberty, albeit expressing it differently. Both expertly market nostalgia, selling visions of their pasts. Both are utterly convinced, in their heart of hearts, that they are offering the world a masterclass in how to be civilized. We turned a political rebellion into the world's most dominant cultural and entertainment Anjana global blockbuster franchise. They turned the fatigue and moral reckoning of a fated empire into a profound, world-leading literary tradition. One nation actively edits its history for inspiration, focusing on the rallying cries. The other painstakingly preserves its history for introspection, dwelling also on the LAMENTATIO, and in the vast, fertile space between our explosive action movies and their nuanced period dramas. Between our giant, sugary coffee and their small, steeped cups of tea lies a single, intertwined story. It's a story of language, law, rebellion, and resilience. It is ultimately a shared narrative. It's just being read, performed, and remembered in two very different, yet equally compelling accents. If this reflection on history, identity, and the stories that bind and divide us resonates with you, help Old World X continue this essential conversation. Hit the like button and share your own experiences with cultural storytelling and national myths in the comments below. Where have you seen the gap between a nation's story and the world's memory?